Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX. This is Riya Dwivedi. Now let's take a look at the topic that is coming in is the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to US. This is a 3-day visit, and amid this he has attended the Quad Summit. The Quad, an alliance comprising the United States, Japan, India and Australia, emphasized its strategic alignment and positive impact on the Indo-Pacific region following a meeting of its leaders. The summit, hosted by US President Joe Biden in Wilmington, Delaware, included Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. The Wilmington Declaration, released after the fourth in-person Quad Summit, states that 4 years since elevating the Quad to a leader-level format, the Quad is more strategically aligned than ever before, and it is a force for good that delivers real, positive and enduring impact for the Indo-Pacific. So this is the latest that is coming in. Now Prime Minister Modi is in US. He has arrived in New York, and he has been welcomed by the Indian diaspora, and he's set to address the Indian diaspora in Nassau in New York. And the Indian diaspora has lined up ready to welcome the Prime Minister. This is his first visit since Modi 3.0. And the key things that he has taken up during this visit is he has held bilateral talks with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. He has also held with Prime Minister of Japan and President Joe Biden. We are being joined by Professor Madhav Nalapat. He is an editorial director of TSG. Madhav Nalapat, now this visit comes amid this is a strategic importance of this visit comes amid China's growing influence. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has visited and held bilateral talks, and according to the US White House US spokesperson John Kirby, he stated that China will be high on agenda. What can you tell our viewers about that? I think we are. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir. Continue.
The Biden administration seems to have woken up to the reality, which is that this is the age of Cold War 2.0 between communist-ruled China and the democracies. It's no longer Cold War 1.0 between the USSR, mainly Russia, and the democracies. It's with China. And in that era, India is central as an alliance partner of the United States in keeping the Indo-Pacific free and secure from external subordination. And in this, the Quad is central. The Wilmington Declaration makes that very clear. It talks of the Quad being relevant for decades and decades to come, an indefinite period. I think this is a very welcome declaration coming out of Wilmington, Delaware. For a simple reason, the Biden administration has been far too focused on Europe and the Atlantic till now. Whether you have Blinken or you have Sullivan or you have 90% or more of the officials in the Biden administration, 90% if not more of their foreign travel is transatlantic. They haven't gone to any other part of the world, neither South America, which is next door, nor Africa, nor Asia, which is the most important continent now, and frankly, the home, one of them, a lot together with North America and South America, the home of the Indo-Pacific. So I'd like to say this is extremely welcome. Now you had this thing called AUKUS, in which you bring in the UK and you ignore Asian countries, you ignore India, you ignore Japan. What kind of an alliance is that to function in Asia without Asian countries? I mean, are you talking about colonial times? Are you talking about times more than 100 years ago? More than 100 years ago, 150 years ago, when the Europeans were dominant in Asia? I think I'm very glad the Biden administration seems to have had a reality check. The declaration makes that clear. And another very welcome development, after all that pussyfooting around after all that flirtation with Xi Jinping, after all that mollycoddling of China by the current White House and the Biden administration, elements there, if I may say so, it is now very clear that the Quad is a security alliance and is committed to the security of the Indo-Pacific against any predatory power. We all know what that predatory power is, which that predatory power is, and I think this is very welcome. I am delighted that the Wilmington Declaration came forward, and I think the hand of Prime Minister Modi has been very important in the framing of this declaration, and I congratulate President Biden for having basically gone ahead with this all-important declaration, which is, in my view, is the new replacement to the Atlantic Charter of the earlier century. This is the new Atlantic Charter, and it will last throughout this 21st century. Thank you.
All right. We are being joined by Ambassador Suresh Goyal. He's a former diplomat. So, Ambassador Suresh Goyal, as Professor Madhav Nalapata was also talking about, now President Joe Biden, he used to focus on Europe first, and it was more transatlantic. Now the focus is shifting to Asian countries, and it's a welcome move. And this also comes amid how Prime Minister has described this, that he stressed about the territorial integrity.
All right. See, if you have read the statement issued at the end of Quad Summit, I would call it a very conservative, very cautious kind of a statement. And that statement, even though it talks about the security cooperation between the Quad partners, in my mind, it doesn't go far enough for simple reason that there are countries in the Pacific, particularly the ASEAN countries, who are central to any kind of planning, any kind of policy in the region. And we have already admitted, we have already said so into clear words, that any action, anything to be done in the Pacific, ASEAN role will be central to it. And ASEAN are very, very cautious. And it's very clear that we know who the country is, what Professor Nalpat refers to as a predatory power. So we all know what country it is. China is a country which is very aggressive and assertive this time, converting several islands into South China Sea into military bases, colliding with the Filipino ship in the area, denying passage to many, many of the maritime things. So clearly there has to be very clear action on China, really. And I think the statement is very cautious in really calling a spade a spade. But that's a wise to do. At the moment, I do not expect that any kind of partnership or any kind of forum in the Pacific will be able to function with the situation that exists. The situation regarding China is very fluid. And we do not know that at the moment the USA have, of course, taken tough lines with China, but there are also signals that on state front, the USA may actually soften towards China. If that happens, will the dynamics change? There are so many question marks. And therefore, diplomats, I would consider the statement as a cautious and conservative statement, looking at the future, but also taking a lot of hope for future.
All right, Ambassador Suresh Goyal, stay with us. Professor Madhav Nalapat, now US and India have sealed a grand mega drone deal of Predator drones, and 31 drones India is set to procure. And this comes amid China's growing influence on the border. So what can you expect? What is the strategic importance of this deal?
Look, let's be clear. Let's not be, in the sense, look only at the fine print. Let's look at the body language. Let's look at the messages that are being transmitted. And I'm sure every major power will understand those messages very clearly. One, I'd like to point out, as Sunday Guardian has said today in the front page, the largest number of military exercises ever conducted is being done by the United States and India. India and the United States are conducting more military exercises than either country conducts, far more military exercises than either country conducts with any other power. That's fact number one. Fact number two, the Predator drones, I think they are welcome. I'm sure they'll be expertly used, and I think the technology transfers are also welcome so that you can make it cheaper and the United States budget will also benefit. But the reality is we are shifting our defense purchases away from Russia to the United States. And this is a reflection of Cold War 2.0. Cold War 2.0 is upon us. And the magnetic pull of that Cold War, I can assure you, is going to ensure more and more that the Quad becomes a security alliance. The Wilmington Declaration is the first open sign of that happening since the 4 years since it became a leadership level summit, which is of course a very important thing. Yes, it is true President Biden and Premier Kishida are stepping down, but the reality is there is a common interest in ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. And may I point out, Prime Minister Modi has from the very beginning stressed the importance of a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific. He has paid a lot of attention to the Quad. He has paid, in fact, he and Shinzo Abe were responsible for reviving the Quad after the previous Australian government run by, I'm sorry to say, a premier who seemed to be extremely close to certain elements in China. He kind of degraded the Quad, and Shinzo Abe and Modi brought it back to life, and with the full support of the United States. So I'd like to say quite clearly, I am very, very happy at the Wilmington Declaration. I'm very, very happy at the body language. You know, you can see the body language between Modi and Biden. There's no trace of that ridiculous clown show that was held in the White House by elements of Sino-Wahhabi lobby in the Biden administration. A clown show involving terror sympathizers and terror facilitators. No sign of that at all. There was warmth and there was a mutual understanding that India and the US have to work together. And I think this is a very good sign for the future. And I hope that Kamala Harris will read these signs. And I'm sure President Trump, in fact, J.D. Vance is absolutely brilliant. He has a very good strategic mind. And I think, you know, Kamala Harris also is a superbly intelligent person. She has shown that as a prosecutor. She has shown that as a senator. So I'm very hopeful of very close relationship. And may I say one thing to you, our channel has been leading the world in this kind of coverage, which is why it's now witnessed all across the world. I'd like to say that it is very clear that this Wilmington Declaration is a clear sign of the Cold War 2.0 between us, between the PRC and democracies, no longer Cold War 1.0, in a situation where the Biden administration has got entangled in the old Cold War matrix by this utter quicksand called the Ukraine conflict. Thank you I'm very hopeful, and I think Prime Minister Modi did well in going there, and I think many of his ideas have been incorporated in the declaration, and frankly, a lot of those ideas are implicit in the declaration. This is the new replacement, the Indo-Pacific replacement for the Atlantic Charter. It's a historic declaration.
All right, Professor Madhav Nalapat and Ambassador Suresh Goyal, stay with us. We have another development coming in. During a recent visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the United States, 297 antiquities have been handed over to India. This event brings the total count of recovered antiquities since 2014 to 640, with 578 of these coming from the United States. In previous years, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's trips to the United States have also facilitated the return of numerous artifacts. In 2021, 157 antiquities were handed over, including a bronze Nataraj statue from the 12th century, following Prime Minister's 2023 US visit. Another 105 antiquities were returned. India has also successfully recovered artifacts from other countries, including 16 from UK and 40 from Australia. So, Professor Madhav Nalapat, now this has a symbolic importance. US is set to return 297 antiquities. What do you make of that?
I'd like to say that I'm glad once again that NewsX is covering this subject. I remember way back, NewsX covered the subject of antiquities where no other channel in India was willing to do the same. The fact is, Prime Minister Modi sees the history of India as a continuum of several thousand years. And as you have correctly said, some of these antiquities are more than 6,000 years old. 6,000 years old. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? And that is the glory of the civilization of the subcontinent. It is thousands and thousands of years old. And from the beginning, in fact, from a very young age in his life, Prime Minister Modi has basically embraced the whole of Indian history, the whole of Indian society, the whole of Indian culture. Unfortunately, you have a lot of people in India who have embraced only the last, say, 800 or 900 years, or the last 300 or so years, and without forgetting about the thousands of years that went past. The Vedic period, the Mughal period, and the British, the Western period, are all three strands of Indian history. One is about 300 years, the other is about 600 years, and the other is 6 millennia, the Vedic strand. So all three strands are important. All three need to be studied and respected. Regrettably, in our schools and textbooks for a long time, slowly it is changing, all the emphasis has been placed, a lot of it has been on the last 300 years, some emphasis on the last maybe 600 or 800, 900 years, almost none at all on the previous millennia, which is absurd, which is completely wrong. And in Prime Minister Modi's time, from 2014 onwards, that has changed. And bringing back antiquities brings back a knowledge that India is a great civilization stretching over millennia, whether it's a Mesopotamian civilization, Babylonian, you take any civilization, India matches that, and that is the important thing. Now, so far as antiquities are concerned, Australia has sent 440. UK has sent a measly, 14 or something, or 12. And the US has given the lion's share. I congratulate the United States. I congratulate President Biden for the effort that he has been made. I think as far as the UK is concerned, they have literally tens of thousands of these antiquities. And I request the government in the UK, by Keir Starmer, at least 1,000 or 2,000. Please give them back to India. Don't hoard them, frankly. Give them back to India. And the goodwill that you will get, I can tell you, will be profound and will cement a strong India-UK partnership in the 21st century. So please, Sir Keir Starmer, please, Prime Minister Starmer, follow the example of the United States, follow the example of Australia, and be less miserly in handing back to India artifacts that were stolen from India. Stolen from India. The stolen goods are never legal. We're not asking for all the tens of thousands of antiquities to come back, which are there in individual homes and museums and all kinds of places. We're just asking for a few hundred. Please give them back, Prime Minister Starmer.